We are going to have Isabella, Olivia, and Mary Alice take a seat right up here. Any of these three chairs. All right. Okay, we're going to start with Isabella.
The call. You shall not pass the flowers nor the open sea. You shall not cross the ocean without me to see. I will be the she who is listening to the call of the wind, so I will be free. This trip may be bumpy, but no doubt about the journey. To shout with glee, the adventure calls for me.
How old are you, Isabella?
I'm 9 years old.
9 years old. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Our next author is Olivia.
A mystery in 1,000 words. 11-year-old Addison ran down the stairs of her tiny apartment. Another knock-knock sounded on the door. "Coming," Addison yelled. She jumped past the 2 last steps and landed on her feet with a thud. She unlocked the door, opened it up, and ran outside to greet her friend Matthew. Matthew said, "Mr. Ronald said $1 million was stolen from the bank last night," Matthew blurted out. Addison put a hand over her mouth. She gasped. "No one knows who stole it," Matthew continued. "The police can't even find one fingerprint, a boot print, not even a wisp of hair." Addison put a finger up. "Hold up, Matthew. You said the police don't even know who it is, right? Well, how is the bank going to get $1 million back from a person they don't even know?" "Well, I don't know." Addison could tell Matthew was nervous. His dad worked at the bank, so the bank could give him lower pay, since they couldn't pay the full amount. "All I know is that someone, a kid, an adult, doesn't matter, has to find that money," Matthew said. "Otherwise, my dad isn't getting paid." Addison started thinking he was going to get that money back. Then she had an idea. "I'll be right back," she yelled, then raced for the door. "Wait," Matthew yelled, but the loud slam of the door cut him off. Addison ran up the stairs and into her bedroom. "Back already?" her mom asked. "I forgot something," she answered. She kept running until she got to her room. She grabbed a notebook from her bookcase and dug through her backpack for a pencil. After she found one, she ran down the stairs and out the door. "What's that for?" Matthew asked, pointing to the notebook. "Clues," Addison answered proudly. "We are not going to the bank," Matthew said loudly. "Oh yes, we are," Addison said as she took his hand and yanked it. "Let's go." 10 minutes later, they were standing outside the bank. "Are you ready?" Addison asked. "No, Addie." "Oh well," Addison said. She started dragging him inside. Then, 5 minutes later, Addison was taking notes of every single speck of dust. "It's just dust, Addie," Matthew groaned. "Let's go." "Wait," Addison yelled. "Dust always has little bits of dead skin in them, right?" "Yeah." "So we can take some to that officer over there and ask him to do a scan on it." "Addie," Matthew groaned. "He probably knows that already." "Then why do they still not know who did it?" she asked. She was already making her way over to the officer. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Do you know you might be able to track down the thief with all this dust here?" "What do you mean, little girl?" the officer asked. "I'm 11, she said. "But I mean, you can find pieces of dead skin in dust, right?" "Well, why not skin the dust?" "We already tried, big girl." "What's with the insults?" Addison thought. Addison walked away from the officer and over to Matthew, or at least where she last saw him. When Addison lifted her head to tell Matthew she wanted to leave, she saw that he wasn't there. She looked left and right, but Matthew was nowhere in sight. "He's probably in the restroom," she thought. So she walked over to the men's restroom and stood there. After 4 minutes, she decided Matthew was playing a game. Maybe just to spook her, since last night a real bad guy came to the same place she was. She started to walk around saying, "Gotcha, Matthew," every time she found a good hiding spot, only to find that he wasn't there. After 20 minutes, Addison stopped. He seriously can't be hiding anymore," Addison thought. Then she sat down on an old, ugly, broken bench. Suddenly, she spotted a moving tile on the floor. It wasn't really moving, to Addison. It looked like someone was trapped underneath, but couldn't get out. She hopped off the bench and leaned over the tile. She slid her fingers underneath and pulled. Addison groaned. "Come on, move already." Poof! Addison looked down into the hole. The tile flew into the air and hit the floor with a crash. Nobody was under the tile, but a huge hole was. "Help!" Matthew screamed from inside. Addison gasped. "Hey!" another voice yelled. Addison looked to her left. The officer she talked to earlier was standing next to her. Suddenly, he pushed her in. "Ah!" she yelped. "Someone, help!" She landed inside a cage with a thud. "Addie," Matthew said. Addison hugged him. "Where are we?" she asked. "No idea." Addison looked around. There was only a small desk in the middle of the room. "I think that officer isn't an officer," Matthew said. "You think?" Bang! The door to the cell slammed open. Matthew smiled. "Hi, Alexa." Alexa was Matthew's girlfriend. Her father worked at the bank, too. "Get out," Alexa demanded. "I told you to stay away, Matthew, didn't I?" "Yeah," he replied. Alexa continued. "I told you my dad was hiding money today, correct?" "Yeah." "What money?" Suddenly, Addison realized why Matthew didn't want to go to the bank. Alexa's dad is the officer who's really the thief. Matthew walked out of the cell. "Sorry, Addie. Alexa promised me some of the money if I kept it a secret." Alexa slammed the door shut and waved. "Bye-bye." Alexa left smirking, followed by Matthew, who was frowning in shame. 2 minutes later, Matthew came back. "I told her my mom made cookies for us." Matthew opened the cell door. "Let's go to the police department," he said. "Thank you for telling us, kiddos," a real officer named Wanda said. "Here's a lollipop for each of you kids." Addison's mom smiled. "My little detective," she said. "No fair!" Alexa screamed from inside her cell. "Yes, fair," Addison and Matthew said together. The end.
Right. How old are you?
10.
10. Wonderful delivery, right?
Yeah.
Really great job reading your story. All right. Our third author today is Mary Alice. Would you like to read her? Mary Alice has elected that a guest author would read her piece today. Her poem is I Make My Own Magic.
To read it. What an honor. Hope I can do some justice to it. Well, I selected this piece and I thought it was brilliant. And as you all know, I love fantasy. Unicorns and fairies are all great fun, but since I've made my own magic since grade 1, a dragon named Reading blocked my way. In isolation, I was forced to stay. I was locked out, ridiculed, and shamed. The rude beast refused to be tamed. At first, letters were friendly and dancing about. When they refused to make words, I started to doubt. The dragon's letters slithered and slipped on the page. They refused to stay in their own word cage. I found letters were magical creatures. Each of them had their own special features. Together these pixies have formed words and woven stories. They've mended hearts and shared heroes' glories. I realize letters are neither friend nor foe. They only wait to be tamed by my own magic's glow. Over time, the dragon named Reading became my friend. Our friendship's uneasy, but lifelong to the end. I make my own magic, you can too. Magic's in everyone, not just a few. Love it!
Wonderful job. And we have some prizes for you ladies as well. We have some author signed copies, and our lovely authors that came today signed a card for you. We'll have Caden, the Trinity, and Raquel. And I don't know if the Trinity was here today, so we will read her piece as well. You can bring your friend up with you, that's okay too, right? All right. And did you still have the guest? Yes. Okay, you got it. Great job. All right, so we are going to start with Miss Caden's piece. And this is August 1944. And she has also elected for one of our judges to read it. Actually, I think two of our
We're going to
judges.
do it together.
Wonderful. I will swap with you. So.
And Kaden, you were my pick, and you do such a great job with character. I was bowled over. Like, you could be publishing now, is how I felt. So we're going to start with August 1944, and this is by Kaden McLaughlin. And I'm going to read one part, and we're going to alternate. So I'll start. Number 1, Minerva Wiseman. Minerva sat up in her bed. What was that sound? What had awakened her? She glanced quickly at the watch sitting on her bedside table. 7 a.m. Must have been the mailman. The space beside her was empty. Peter must have already gone to the barn, working with the animals. Minerva temporarily savored the exquisite feeling of warmth inside her four-poster, and then her mothering duties caught up with her. "Mommy," called a small voice from the room one door down from hers. "Mommy!" This time more urgent. Minerva sacrificed her comfort and arose to greet her young son. "Good morning, Tommy." The young boy, standing up in his small bed, leaning against the safety rail, collapsed in his mother's arms as soon as she lifted him off the bed. "Eat?" he asked before snuggling into her strong embrace. He lifted one chubby arm and buried his hand in the soft hair around her neck. Only a child could make me get up so early, she thought. As they entered the farmhouse kitchen, Minerva opened the windows, letting in a few moths, and breathed in deeply the scent of the morning dew. Setting little Tommy down in his high chair, she began cooking the fresh eggs and bacon from their own farm, enjoying the solitude. Soon enough, she knew, her daughter Alexandra would come down for breakfast. Peter would return from the barn, either grim about the cow not giving enough milk, or jubilant over the number of eggs he had gathered. Now was the only time she'd get by herself today, and she didn't mind little Tommy sharing it. The house began to stir as the sun climbed in the sky. Simultaneously, Peter and Alexandria entered the kitchen from opposite sides. The few seconds that Minerva had had to herself were over. The day had begun.
Number 2, Peter Weissman. Peter Weissman was an outdoorsman. In college, he had planned to become a naturalist. But then he had married Minerva Weissman, and his plans had changed. Now he was raising his family on a farm. At least, as he always told himself, he had the farm and the animals. If he couldn't have his dream, at least he had something close. Leaving the barn, he took a moment to savor the late summer morning still glistening under a blanket of dew from the night before. The stand of regal oak trees beside the house stood tall, dwarfing everything around it. Here, moss grew, nurtured by their shade, and moths and butterflies danced together. He spotted a rabbit hiding in the underbrush. All this Peter observed with great care, his eagle eye taking in everything. How he loved his morning walk with nature, as he called it. He hadn't missed this daily ritual in nearly a decade. It was good for him too, or so the doctor said. In truth, Peter didn't really care about what the doctor said. He hadn't been born yesterday. He knew that eventually he would die from the cancer, and he also knew that nature could heal him, little by little. And so he lived life today as if it was his last day, with nature giving him strength. Minerva didn't know about the cancer. The news was only 3 days old, and he didn't want her to worry. There would be time for worry when they knew more.
Number 3, Alexandria Weissman. She had always been a quiet one, Alex. Always had her nose buried in a book. Lewis Carroll, J.M. Barrie, Mark Twain, these were her friends. They had given her pages full of lovely and interesting adventures. For real life was no adventure, or so she saw it. In truth, Alex's life was interesting. She lived on a farm. Her older brother was in the army, but to a girl of 12, these things were just typical. Everyone Alex knew lived on a farm, and almost everyone she knew had a relative fighting in the war. Her life was boring. Of that, she was certain. Alex's only exciting bits, she said, were her letters from Robbie. Those of all the things she had read were the most exciting. Imagine living in a faraway camp full of gruff soldiers and fighting the Nazis, and now that was exciting. Call her naive or selfish, but Alex knew that her real reason for wanting to fight was that she'd be with her beloved older sibling. Robbie was a role model for Alex, always a daredevil. He had climbed trees that made cats scared, caught poisonous snakes, played pranks on the town, and now he had joined the military. Sighing, Alex set down her book, Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, and went to the kitchen in hope of finding another one of Robbie's letters waiting for her on the breakfast table.
Number 4, Tommy Weissman. Everyone was there in the kitchen. More bacon was sizzling. Eggs were warm on plates. The sun was shining, yet no one seemed cheerful about it. Tommy, not understanding why the mood had darkened in such a short time, threw a handful of eggs across the kitchen. It landed against the screen door with a plop and slid down. But Mommy missed her cue to clean it up. Tommy was confused. He hadn't even been scolded. Now this was unusual. He screeched like an owl. Nothing. He tried putting his bowl on his head. Still nothing. Finally, Tommy started sobbing. Minerva, her glance unfocused, picked him up and held him, staring at something on the table. He held her, his messy arms staining her white blouse. A door slammed. Tommy's father had left for the barn. Alex, sobbing quietly, retreated to her room. Minerva set Tommy down, still wearing his breakfast, put her head in her hands, and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Weissman, we regret to inform you of Robbie Weissman's disappearance on the 5th of August. Stop. Missing in action. Stop. The U.S. military. And how old are you?
12, right? I know. I was like, I need to do better.
Thank you so much for reading. Wonderful job. Hang out with us, right? All right, is a Trinity here? I don't think so, so I will read her poem. The Trinity is included for a poem titled Poor Little Blackbird. When you ask me what's wrong, I'll say nothing, but the look in my eyes says I'm struggling. I'm trapped and I'm scared all in one. Am I angry or frightened? You choose, love. I want to tell you, I really do, but I don't think you can handle the truth. I laugh every day and fake a smile, but inside I'm screaming, help me now. They tell me I'm worth it, and to keep pushing, but I'm breaking, can't you see? There's barely anything. I hug you as you cry, but who's there for me? It's okay, dear, stand on your feet. I could scream and cry, but what good would that do? As long as I live, my duty is to serve you. I hold it all in because I was trained that way, but you get to express yourself every single day. Poor little blackbird, they all say. Poor little blackbird has gone away. Wow. Glad she wasn't here to read it herself, right? Our next author is Miss Raquel Perry, and I'll tell you guys, the question when we read Raquel's poems wasn't, I wonder if she'll make it, it was which of her poems was going to make it. And that is why today Raquel has 2 poems that are in the literary mag. So if you will, please read for us.
Brothers and sisters. We are brothers and sisters, daughters and sons of a generation who wanted to give up on love years ago, but we do our best to uncover it. We are a constellation, beautifully illuminated by our imperfections, but we wear our differences like armor, because we fear what we'll see if we're allowed that second of individuality to understand emotions and display vulnerability. We are brothers and sisters who inhale criticism and exhale cynicism because the men before us did not acknowledge such a cruel world, so we only embrace it. Drape ourselves in abject misery, try to stitch and mend the problems of our history. We are brothers and sisters, a mass of degenerates in despair who crave a sweet and hollow feeling for the lack of love that we knew because no one told us we would be born in such a place. We wear our sadness as a charm. I wonder when unhappiness became so impossible to replace. But at some point in between the energy, the passion, the optimism, and the pride, we are here together with the fulfillment of desire to do something better for the next generation. My second piece is the guiding hope of our people. Beautiful black woman, you are sensuous. Your splendor is like the shining sun. You are wondrous. Wondrous ways coming from your soul, which no man may hope to control. Beautiful black woman, you are the guiding hope of our people. Every time you are broken, the world gets covered with sadness. Beautiful black woman, your spirit is like a shining church tower which points directly to the heaven above. Your magical essence can make 2 hearts fall in love. Beautiful black woman, why can't you see how much you mean to me? Beautiful black woman, you were tortured, abused, blamed for nothing. Deep down in your soul, the words are often untold of the pain that you somehow controlled. If you only knew that you were created with brown sugar, warm honey, cocoa, and precious gold. You were a mother fighting for her children, and a daughter who was taught to be a warrior by her parents. They couldn't help but to minimize, delegitimize, criticize with a dark veil over their eyes, but as Maya Angelou would say, we still rise. Beautiful black woman, you are the guiding hope of our people.
Thank you.